This Week in Startups is brought to you by WordPress. Your business needs an online home. It needs a WordPress website. Go to WordPresscom/twist to create your website and find the plan that's right for you. That's WordPress.com/twist for 50% off your brand new website. And LinkedIn. A business is only as strong as its people, and every hire matters. Go to LinkedIn.com/twist to get a $50 credit towards your first job post.
Hey everybody, welcome back to This Week in Startups, the podcast where I, Jason Calacanis, interview founders of companies and investors in companies. And on very rare occasions, we'll have somebody who's a professor or an author on, who I respect greatly, and I think is brilliant or smart. Today, Jeffrey Pfeffer is back on the program for his second or third appearance? Third time, yes. I know you've been on a couple times. I always enjoy our time together, so welcome back to the program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Yes, and so we're here because your latest book is out, and it's a doozy. Dying for a Paycheck, How Modern Management Harms Employee Health and Company Performance, and What We Can Do About It. Why did you decide to write this book? What was the jumping off point that you saw that said this book needs to be written? Because it's a lot of work to write a book. We both know that. We're both authors.
Yeah. So I've served for years on committees of human resource executives, and they are obsessed with healthcare costs. There is a healthcare cost crisis across the developed and the developing world. And if you think about what is causing healthcare costs, according to the World Economic Forum, 3/4 of all healthcare spend in the world is on chronic disease. Chronic disease comes from individual behaviors like smoking, drinking, overeating, not exercising. And those individual behaviors are largely, though not completely obviously, caused by stress, and stress is caused by work. So work is a literally public health crisis in the world. And if we are going to solve the healthcare crisis, let alone the fact that in the last 2 years, for the first time in modern history, life expectancy in the United States went down. We need to do something about work environments. If I told you, which would not surprise you, that according to the Mayo Clinic, the person you report to at work is more important for your health than your family doctor, you would not be surprised, because people spend a lot of time at work. Work is an important environment. We need to fix the workplace.
Fascinating, because you're making a couple of jumps there. One is all these bad outcomes that are occurring can be traced back to the workplace. Now, most people would say, why is this the workplace's issue? Isn't this the doctors and the individual's issue? Why is this the job of management? Why is this the job of the CEO or founder of the company to handle the employee's stress?
So I think there's two answers to that. The first answer is because when people go to work at a company, at a workplace, each day, they entrust to some extent, actually to a big extent, their psychological and physical well-being to the organization. And the organization ought to be a good steward of this. That's number one. But the most fundamental answer to your question is that there is an enormous, and I mean literally enormous, epidemiological literature going back probably 4 decades that has made the case that things like long work hours adversely affect health, that the absence of job control adversely affects health, that economic insecurity, which comes from layoffs and also now this scheduling software where people are on demand and they never know what they're going to make from one week to the next, is a source of health problems. That work-family conflict is a source of both psychological and physical work problems. That the workplace stress is associated with unhealthy behaviors. So there is an enormous scientific literature that makes the case that the workplace is a consequential environment that has profound health effects. Many of these studies are longitudinal. Many of them, most of them, virtually all of them, have been published in the most prestigious journals. And so that's why I think it is the boss's responsibility. Bosses create the work environments, be they toxic or non-toxic.
Okay. And we have OSHA in the country, right, to make sure people don't get physically injured. You bring this up in the book. I thought this was one of the most convincing parts. If we're going to say, hey, we need people to be physically safe. They don't get their arm cut off by the meat grinder. They don't get hit by the robot. Or, God forbid, the orca does not drown them by their ponytail because for some reason, SeaWorld thought it was wise to put trainers in the water with a species whose first name is Killer. This is the world we're living in. OSHA finally said no more trainers in the water, correct? But your prediction, I think, and your insight, which we're going to unpack here, and how to actually apply it is, just like you wouldn't throw people in the killer whale tank, and OSHA looks over that, maybe you could look forward thinking and not throw people into the aggressive a-hole boss tank and have them grind their teeth and have anxiety issues and depression issues and panic attacks. Am I...
That's correct. There, you've got it. That's exactly right. And speaking of teeth grinding,
yes.
I just came back from Spain. And while I was in Spain, I met with somebody who works actually for a company in the United Kingdom. And she said that her dentist who sold her one of those mouth guards,
yes.
said that years ago he did one a year. More recently, he's done one a month. Now he does 2 or 3 mouth guards a day. That is the increase in stress in the modern economy. And this is not good for us because, Jason, as you probably know, or if you don't know, you could easily find out, stress is a physiological, basically evolutionarily designed reaction to when you see something threatening to you, it's fight or flight. And that raises your cortisol level. And it's very adaptive as long as it's temporary. But persistently high levels in the bloodstream of cortisol have been found. I mean, this is like scientific cell biology, not me. It breaks down with cellular mechanisms. This is extremely harmful.
Cortisol is in a way like the new, like smoking. If we were to draw a parallel to a health crisis, we convince people to not suck on cancer sticks and through all kinds of behavior, like taxing the cancer sticks or not letting the cancer sticks inside the building. Yet we don't think about cortisol in the same way we think about lung cancer. But the fact is, it probably is similar in the amount of time it takes off people's lives. People lose lives. The number one killer of men, I believe, is heart attacks.
Yes. And
this correlates with stress.
Yes.
Are men and women different when it comes to dealing with stress?
No, not much. I think the response is pretty much the same. I think the only difference that I noticed, and this would not be statistical difference, this would be just a difference that I noticed in my interviews, is that I think women are more willing to admit that they can't cope with the work environment.
Got it.
So if you're in a stressful, crappy place, the women will say, "I'm in a stressful, crappy place. I can't cope. I'm leaving." The men will say, "I'm in a stressful, crappy place, but I'm going to tough it out."
Got it. Interesting. So men will grin and bear it, and women will just say, this isn't worth it.
Yes.
Let's talk about a specific company, Amazon.
Yes.
There was a story written in the New York Times that was very polarizing. You're very familiar with it, I assume.
Yes.
And in this story, the New York Times claims, and I have no reason to dispute the claim, that they talked to 400, 500, 600 people, current and former employees. They paint a picture of an environment that is so stressful that a woman miscarried her baby, that people were suicidal, that people were beside themselves, yet Amazon is ranked as one of the best places to work, and people never leave, or some group of people never leave. And people consider it the most challenging place to work, and they're loyal to it. How does one reconcile a place like Netflix also had this? I had Patty McCord on the program, and she talked extensively about hiring adults, not kids, and that you have to take responsibility and you have to perform. This is not for everybody. So there's a Navy SEALs-like attitude in our industry. Elon has even called it that at Tesla, that if you want to work here, we are trying to do extraordinary things. I want to invest in companies that do extraordinary things. So how do I, as an investor, and how do those people look at people are pushing for extraordinary results and getting them? And that is the competitive landscape, Jeffrey. And you're telling people to not essentially be anti-competitive and make it a rose garden for people and worry about their anxiety, worry about their personal issues, as opposed to worrying about the bottom line.
So I will give you several responses.
Yes.
First response is that the costs. So 40 or 50 years ago, some number of years ago, some number of decades ago, companies said we can outcompete our competitors by basically not worrying about the stuff that we put into the air, the water, and the land. And these are externalized costs. These are costs that are passed to the larger society. And so that's called environmental pollution. Social pollution is doing exactly the same thing with human beings. When people either drop dead or worse, for the society's point of view, are so incapacitated that they can no longer go to work, and they are now relying on the public health system or the public welfare system, the companies have externalized those costs. And I would argue, I think even conservative economists would argue, that if you want companies to make good decisions, they have to see the full cost of their actions, not be able to pass the costs off to the larger society. So that's, I think, one part of the answer is to this. Number two, if you said to me, Jeffrey, we could really we could make a lot more money if we didn't pay people at all. That was called slavery. We decided that there are some practices which are simply so morally repugnant that we will not permit them. Slavery, child labor, you can probably add to the list.
Minimum wage is something to keep a low wages from.
But I would start with slavery. We decided that regardless of the economic consequences of slavery, it was simply morally unacceptable.
Right.
I would argue that it is morally unacceptable to kill 120,000 people a year in the United States, which makes the workplace the fifth leading cause of death. I don't think, if you believe, as many politicians say, but of course they don't act on this, that human life is sacred, then human life is sacred. And you can't trade off human life for, a slightly better.
So people getting $500,000 a year opting into working at Amazon and those employees who have opted in to having extraordinary compensation for extraordinary sacrifice and stress should not be allowed to do that? Should it be regulated?
I actually believe it should be. But let me point out something about the work practices that we're talking about. And again, I didn't interview like a zillion people from Amazon, only a few. But here I can give you one statistic.
Yeah, please.
1 year, Amazon, who recruits at Stanford Business School, hired 12 people from the Stanford MBA program, which is, of course, an expensive thing to do. 1 year later, 0 of them were left. Zero. By the way, today, Amazon, it was announced again in the New York Times website, and Jeff Bezos is quite proud of this. They pay people to quit.
Yes, that was Tony Hsieh's big innovation at Zappos, which was, hey, if you don't want to be on this train, let's get you out now.
Yes.
We'll give you 2 weeks salary to not even start after your training program.
Yes.
Good practice, bad practice.
An interesting practice.
Yeah, it's notable, but the results are undeniable. They're about to be $1 trillion company, $790 billion. So again, if people are opting into it, is it wrong? And how would one regulate it? So is it wrong? I think so. If you said to me, either we are going to give some priority, which at the moment we give none, to human life and human well-being. In that case, then you've got to give some priority to it, or else you can say it's all about dollars. So the question that you have not asked, but I'll both ask and answer, is what has changed over the last 40 or 50 years? Okay, now hold on to that for a second. What has changed, Jeffrey, is my question to you, over the last 4 decades when we get back on This Week in Startups? Yes, WordPress.com. We use it here for Calacanis.com, my own personal website, and thisweekinstartups.com, and we use it every day. Your business needs an online home, you know this, and it needs a WordPress.com website. It makes it so easy for your customers to connect with you, and they can find you super simple because WordPress.com is super SEO optimized, it's easy to use, and they take care of all that technical stuff. Everything is done for you. Your site's up and running in minutes, and they have an incredible customer support team ready to help you 24 hours a day, Monday through Friday. And on weekends. That's the punchline there, huh? It's 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and plans start at just $4 a month. And of course, all WordPress plans include a custom domain name for the life of the plan. In other words, you get your domain name for free. Come to WordPress.com and you will see why 28% of websites run on WordPress. I'm not saying blogs, I'm not saying content sites, I'm saying all websites, all sites on the web. 28% of them run WordPress.com. That's because WordPress.com is so amazing. It has so many features. I literally could do 3 hours just reading the feature list and make everybody go bonkers. And we'd have to do a whole podcast. There must be a podcast out there about WordPress. Anyway, I could go on and on. Get started today with 15% off any new plan. So go to WordPress.com/twist, WordPress.com/TWIST to create your website and find the plan that is right for you. WordPress.com/twist for 15% off your brand new website. Okay, thanks so much, WordPress. We really appreciate your support for This Week in Startups.com and Calacanis.com. So let's get back to this amazing episode. Welcome back, everybody. I'm on fire today. I got Jeffrey Pfeffer here from Stanford Business School. You're a professor there.
Yes.
How long have you been a professor at Stanford Business
Since 1979. You weren't even born.
I was 9 years old. What are you talking about? I just got I was just started to use computers at that. I was on a TRS 80 or something at that point. And Jeffrey has a lot of famous students. You do have a lot of famous students here in Silicon Valley.
I'm sure I must.
Do you keep a list of those, of all the people who went on to do great things?
I do not.
Do you have tenure over there?
I came with as a full professor with tenure.
Oh, you did?
Okay.
So they can't get rid of you. You got that tenure.
That's it.
The program is still great, right? The Stanford Business School is just a great program.
It's a great program with a great faculty and great students.
Why are those students so entrepreneurial by the time they get out of there?
Because they've come, partly it's self-selection. They've come because they're interested in entrepreneurship. Stanford's the place to go to be an entrepreneur because you're surrounded by great engineers. I don't know if you know this, but I believe at one time this was true, may still be true, that if the Stanford Engineering School was a separate university, it would be larger than MIT.
Wow.
So the engineering school the engineering and science part of Stanford is a significant fraction of that campus.
Interesting. So the business school, brilliant MBA students get to tap into this incredible resource of engineering right at their fingertips.
Engineering and science in the medical school, of course, and bioscience and bioengineering.
I have such a chip on my shoulder about not being accepted and having an MBA. Someday I wish I had that MBA.
You've done quite well.
I know, but you know what? I'm just not part of it. This is what I need to do, Jeffrey. I need to be a guest lecturer or maybe teach a course. Ooh.
Yeah, that would be great.
What are the chances of...
What I need to do is I need to write a case on you because you're one of the most interesting human beings I know.
Well, thank you, Jeffrey.
It's true.
I think I got to take that as a compliment.
You should. When
we left, we were talking about this 40 years. So, something has changed over the last 40 years, both about humans and how we handle stress and the amount of stress we're feeling, I believe, because when I was growing up, we didn't have panic attacks, ADD, ADHD. People were not bipolar. We weren't aware of this. And we didn't talk about it in this way. There was nobody in our class suffering from depression. There was nobody suffering from ADHD that we knew of. Now it seems like are we just diagnosing people like crazy now? Or is there nothing killing us and all that's left is mental illness? What's changed over the last 40 years?
Well, I think two things have changed, and your question poses one. So number one, there is, we can argue about what has caused this, but there is objectively much more prescribing of antidepressants and ADHD drugs and sleeping pills and all these other things, which are making the pharma companies rich, than there was 40 or 50 years ago. And now we can have a debate in which I'm not prepared to have because I'm not an expert in this, as to whether this is more diagnosis or whether, in fact, there has been a change. But the short-term change, for instance, in ADHD prescriptions and where it has occurred, suggests that part of this is people taking these drugs to stay awake because of, for mental illness and illness, and to try to keep a competitive edge. The one thing that I
performance,
yes, a form of performance. We don't dope horses. So I met two lovely women who run this leadership program on a ranch, and they said to me, which I think is right, they said if we did which is an interesting thing to go back to our earlier discussion. Then I want to make another point. But in any event, they said if you treated horses like many companies treat employees, you would be in such trouble with the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. So you would not make the same. You would not make the same argument about horses that you just made about Amazon and its employees.
Right. Well, the horses. I guess the opt-in is the key thing.
Yes.
That's the. I mean, we'll get back to that. But let's get to this about what's changed now, because pharma is one. There does seem to be that people have abdicated their own mental health to a pill, as opposed to maybe saying, maybe I should turn my device off. Maybe I should meditate. Maybe I should exercise. I don't want to get all. Who's that nutty actor, Scientologist, Tom Cruise, who jumped up and down? It's like, listen, you guys don't understand depression. You just got to work out. It's like, he's not wrong. Exercise is one of the first things people tell people to do. So people have abdicated their ability and their ability to deal with stress and sleep to pills, which is a terrible idea. What else has changed in the workforce that makes it seem like there's something happening here that's very of the moment?
So I think that every listener to the show, regardless of their other beliefs and views, would agree with the following statement. Because it's, I think, factually true, 40 or 50 years ago, when you asked a CEO, particularly of a big company, how they saw their role, they would tell you that they saw their role as balancing the interests of employees, customers, shareholders, and the community. And as you know, we have moved from the theory of stakeholder capitalism to one of shareholder capitalism. It is all about the shareholders. It is all about share price. In fact, you said to me earlier, how do we know Amazon's a great company? Because it's the most valuable company in the world.
Yeah, there's a scorecard. We have a scorecard.
I don't believe that is the only scorecard. Okay. I believe that there are other scorecards. One scorecard is, once the scorecard ought to be the health status of the workforce, both mental and physical, because environments matter. Yes, Jason, you are, of course, as always, completely correct. People do need to take responsibility for their own health and well-being, oftentimes, by the way, by quitting where they're working. But we also know from decades of research in social psychology that environments matter. That if I put you into a toxic environment, there are going to be limits to what you can do. So, to use, you see you got those charts there, many of the workplace exposures that we have studied, when you do the meta-analyses and combine all this epidemiological research, are as toxic to health, both self-reported health and of having a physician-diagnosed illness and mortality, as secondhand smoke, a known and regulated carcinogen. And when people tell me they cannot leave their workplace because people like Amazon or GE, it's played on their ego, and Elon Musk, it says, aren't you good enough to be here? And, we're doing special things, et cetera, et cetera. If the room is filling up with smoke, I would tell you, get out.
Yeah. It does seem that there is a celebration of intensity in America, and to our capitalism. And it does seem to break at a certain point. I know many young people who feel they have to work whatever it is. They think they're working 80 hours a week. When you actually look at the hours they're actually working, if you were to ask them to self-report what they got done every day, it would be like you would see nothing on the list, because all they did was do email and read the web. And this is one of the things I'm really trying to work on with my team and with the teams I work with, which is actually the result as opposed to the time put in. Yes. And perhaps the best advice I've ever been given is, you want to be efficient. You want to do it with the least amount of work to get the result so you can sustain your energy, which when you have children, you realize, what's the least amount of work I can do here to get through this moment so I have energy for them later? What can companies do to change this and turn it around while still being competitive? Because that's what people listening are going to want to understand. Is I want to win the scorecard. I want my valuation to go up. I want to be more profitable. I want my shareholders to make money, but I also want, and I want my team to work hard, I guess. Maybe they're just saying work hard because they want it to be, it's a badge of honor to work hard here in the Valley. But really, they want to do it while still having people enjoy working there.
Yes. So
What's the advice to like actually balance these two things? I think?
So the first word of advice would be, of course, to the leaders is to model the behavior that you want your employees to exhibit. So, if you want your employees to have a balanced life, you need to lead a balanced life yourself, which, by the way, many of these leaders do not. It's interesting to this hard work idea. Studies at the national level and studies at the industry level, including over time, suggests that beyond a certain point, and we've all reached that point, the more hours you work, the less productive you become.
Absolutely. Diminishing returns.
Hugely diminishing returns.
Yeah.
And the returns at some point diminish so much that they become negative. Because if you are a software engineer and you're programming when you're exhausted, you are going to add errors into the code.
That have to be fixed.
And it's much easier to prevent them than it is to find them.
So there is some sweet spot to that.
So you need to control work hours. You certainly need, the evidence suggests that layoffs do not increase stock price or increase productivity or increase profitability. So it's not clear what we are buying for all this economic insecurity. That's completely unclear.
It has been the trend in companies that when you take over a company, if you want to be a hero to the shareholders, to the board, just get those layoffs in first. And in fact, Marissa's big mistake, according to everybody universally here, was she didn't do a quick, efficient layoff at Yahoo, and that's why they were never able to turn it around. I don't know if it's true or not, but they were kind of bloated.
Yeah. Well, layoffs, certainly there is a correlation between layoffs and one thing, CEO compensation. The more layoffs you do, the more money you make, but not necessarily the higher the stock price. Because I don't know if you saw this recent article that came out, which is getting a lot of press, in which they looked at the distributions, which of course follows a power law for organizational performance and for CEO compensation. And there is essentially no overlap in the two distributions, that the top 1% of performance is not the top 1% in compensation and vice versa.
Compensation's been broken for a long time.
Compensation is broken.
Yeah, and governance too, right?
Governance is, yes.
We have to get that worked out. And I really feel like Silicon Valley has gotten this wrong.
Well, Silicon Valley has, of course, all these preferred, preference shares and, supermajority voting rights and all this other stuff.
It really has the fact that everybody universally here gets, if they're successful, those super rights, and they get to be chairman and CEO and it's too powerful to the point at which if you look at like a company like Facebook, it's pretty clear that Zuckerberg answers to no one. So much so that Mark Andreessen was like manipulating other board members to give him, it was like literally covertly negotiating, allegedly, according to these SMSs, against other board members who he was SMSing to Zuckerberg while they were negotiating on the phone and got busted doing it. Like, this is how crazy it's gotten out here. We want the CEO to be God King, but that is not a great way to run.
Probably
companies.
not.
Yeah. When we get back, I want to look at some of these statistics that you did, because you did some original research here.
Yes.
Yeah, let's get into the original research so we can get a deeper base level understanding about how bad physical health is in America in the workplace when we get back on This Week in Startups. Yes, LinkedIn jobs. I love LinkedIn. I've been spending a ton of time on LinkedIn. I love the new feed, by the way, where you can share information and see what your friends are up to. But putting aside their amazing new feed that's highly addictive, I want to talk today about hiring. We all know that hiring is hard. We have many open positions here, and it takes us months to find high-quality candidates. And you know that your business is only as strong as the people you have working for you, like Emmy Award-winning producer Jackie and Jason DeMond, who runs the incubator. We have all these great people here. Well, where are those great people? They're on LinkedIn. It's the world's largest professional network, and it's the best way to find great talent. All that talent is sitting there ready and waiting. Yes, 70% of the U.S. workforce is already on LinkedIn. And if you're hearing my voice, you have a LinkedIn page. I know you do. And that means you also know that you're going to find quality candidates on LinkedIn. Businesses rate LinkedIn jobs 40% higher than job boards at delivering quality candidates. And you know why this is. It's because it's the world's largest professional network. So just ask the hundreds of thousands, yes, hundreds of thousands of businesses that have posted to LinkedIn jobs over the past year. 22 million professionals, and this is the amazing number, view and apply to jobs on LinkedIn every week. I'm not saying 22 million people log on to LinkedIn every week. That would be an amazing number in and of itself. No, 22 million people look at the jobs and apply to the jobs on LinkedIn every week. And that's in every industry. So if you're not using LinkedIn for your hiring needs, you are missing out. Here's your call to action, and this is a good one. I want you to go to linkedin.com/twist, linkedin.com/TWIST. When you go there, you're going to get a $50 credit towards your first job posting. Think about that. $50 is sitting there waiting for you. So I want you to pull over. I want you to get in front of your computer. I want you to get offline at Blue Bottle or wherever you're having your espresso and go to linkedin.com/twist, linkedin.com/twist, and get that $50 credit. Terms and conditions apply, of course, like any of these things. And I can tell you, we've had an incredible run finding highly talented people on LinkedIn and using LinkedIn Jobs. So get that $50 and give it a shot. Let me know how it goes for you. LinkedIn.com/twist. Hey, and go follow me. Add me as a contact on LinkedIn. You can find me, Jason Calacanis. I'm right there. And you'll see how often I'm on there. I'm posting clips from the show. I'm asking questions. LinkedIn is just on fire. So go ahead and go to linkedin.com/twist for your $50 credit today. All right, let's get back to this amazing episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to This Week in Startups. We do the show twice a week. We've been doing so for 9 years. And if you want to help, there are 2 things you can do. Number 1, write a review. My mom reads every one on iTunes. Number 2, tweet the episode. If you liked it, tweet it, share it on Facebook or LinkedIn. Let a couple friends know about it. We really do this show. Well, when I think about why we do the show, number 1, I like to have an excuse to have an intelligent discussion like you and I are having, Jeff. And number 2, it's great for deal flow. People from around the world watch the show and then they email Jason at Calacanis with their business. So if you're listening and you have a business and you need money, I'm an angel investor. I write checks for a living. So go ahead and email Jason at Calacanis. My guest today has a new book out, Dying for a Paycheck, How Modern Management Harms Employee Health and Company Performance and What We Can Do About It. And of course, you were here back in 2015 talking about leadership BS, fixing workplaces and careers one truth at a time. It is a theme for you, the humanity in the workplace. Does it seem like it's getting better over time for people in the workplace, or does it feel like we've now flipped and it's getting worse again?
It's certainly getting worse.
Certainly getting worse.
It is certainly getting worse. And the reason is, if you look at what is negatively associated with health and well-being, long work hours, work-family conflict, economic insecurity, not getting in the United States access to health insurance, all of these things, Kaiser Family Foundation, smaller percentage of companies offering health insurance, higher copays, higher deductibles. Gallup has a data survey out relatively recently. They asked Americans, random sample of Americans, the following question: have you had to forego filling a prescription or seeing a doctor in the last year because of cost? 1/3 of the people said yes. Now, lower for the people with health insurance, but even for the people with health insurance, many people are foregoing this. Economic insecurity is certainly getting worse. We've gone from careers to jobs to gigs.
Yeah.
The gig economy, you never know what you're going to make from one week to the next. Your income fluctuates, your hours fluctuate. What does not fluctuate is your mortgage and your college tuition.
Okay,
bills.
now let me take the other side of this. People have air conditioning, access to the latest healthcare, even if there are copays and whatnot. A car bought today has more technology and safety than the best car had in 1990 or 1980. And many things are not inflating, they're deflating in terms of cost, whether it's food or jeans. So the people today live better than Rockefeller did in terms of their existence. Yet it doesn't seem to be enough for certain people. Maybe that's because of this Instagram culture where you see people on private jets and the stakes keep going up. But in addition to that, people with the gig economy would argue, I get to set my own hours, work as much as I want, and we might be moving to a situation where people are opting to not have careers but to have lives. These young millennials want to have experiences, and they value experiences over career success. So is that another story to be told at a later date, what they're doing? And the boomers who are deciding to do gig economies and have big bills, that doesn't work for them, but maybe the gig economy does work for this new group of people who live in tiny homes and who live with 50 and under possessions. There's a whole sort of lightweight lifestyle that's driven by working 2 days a week, 3 days a week instead of 5. What are your thoughts on
this is
the counter to the gig economy?
I'm talking to a man who lives on a 3-acre house, a 3-acre lot in Hillsborough. So,
I am rich. Yes.
So now you're rich.
But you live near me.
I understand. Yeah. But we have not
be
quite,
careful.
not quite as big a house. But the point is that, people may be able to adapt to lower incomes or to more fluctuating incomes, but I don't think many people actually would choose, to drive for Uber as a career. There are some who will, but not many.
But what about this issue of I don't want a career? I just want to go do experiences, pursue my art, pursue whatever I want to do, being a parent, and I just want to work 2 or 3 days a week. Is that wrong to just do make some quick pocket change?
No, of course not. But the question is this sustainable? So as I walked to your office today, you know what I'm about to tell you. I passed. San Francisco, which is ostensibly a rich city,
looks like the richest cities in the world.
It looks like a third world country.
It's crazy. It's Calcutta out here. Yeah.
It is exactly Calcutta. There's garbage everywhere. I passed, and this is the middle of the day.
To Calcutta. I gotta get some emails from Calcutta any minute.
No, we look like a third world country. We got homeless people. We got beggars. In 2 blocks in the middle of the day.
Yeah. And I wonder how much of that is job related or policy, because we have the lowest unemployment. And wages have gone pretty high recently. Isn't that correct?
No, that is not correct. Average wages have not gone up very much at all.
I guess I'm thinking about the wages here in San Francisco, since we're talking about San Francisco, but across the country it hasn't.
That's correct. And the wages in San Francisco haven't gone up if you are a worker for the Hilton.
Got it.
Yeah. If you are an engineer for Google, you're probably doing well.
Yeah.
But if you are a school teacher, a police person, a fire person, a nurse, which is often the nurses are often on strike.
You might be sideways.
Yeah, you might be sideways, and we do have, even in the most wonderful professions, enormous troubles with alcoholism and drug abuse and burnout. Physician burnout, if you're the listeners, do a little search under the term physician burnout. It's
crazy.
It's horrible. If they look up one of my favorite New York Times articles, I think it was the 5th most downloaded article last year, The Lawyer, the Addict.
Oh my God, that was crazy. It was a Wilson Sonsini lawyer who was addicted to heroin or something.
He was addicted to all kinds of drugs, and he died from an infection. By the way, I know his widow because she actually is a freelance writer for Stanford at one point.
Wow.
So I know her personally.
And he was just trying, this is a person who's obviously got 6-figure compensations, just trying to keep up.
Correct. And by the way, when she is now writing a book, because when you do the 5th most downloaded story, book publishers come calling, and she has talked to the American Bar Association, and they have committees on alcoholism and drug abuse. And so the idea that we live in this, wonderful world, these are exactly as you said, these are wealthy, professional people, doctors and lawyers, drug abuse, stress, burnout, quitting.
And they're opting into it, which is the crazy part to me. They're opting into working in these jobs. They're opting into doing the drugs or taking the performance enhancers or, taking psychoactive drugs instead of taking more natural ways to do it. What are some common sense, if I was starting a 10-person startup or 20-person startup, that I could do as the founder? Because you did mention the trickle down, I think, which is how the founder behaves.
That's correct.
Is going to set the standard. Let's unpack that a bit.
Okay. So when I just came, prior to being with you, to being on your show, which I always love, because you're a fabulous interviewer, and you really are. But I just came from a place called Collective Health. Collective Health is trying to redefine the health benefits administration industry and to bring data science to make people healthier and manage medical costs better. When Collective Health now is probably 400 people, they just raised $110 million. Collective Health, when it began, I was talking to their head of marketing, and she hasn't worked there very long. She got hired by the founder, Ali Diab. And Ali said, we're very family friendly. And she said, I'm a marketing person. Don't give me all this marketing stuff. And then one day she saw him leave at 4 o'clock to go to see one of his kids' recitals.
Yeah.
And so that is the modeling of the behavior. When the founder, Jim Goodnight of SAS Institute would leave at 6 o'clock, because the gates would close at 6. Because his deal was, you come in, you work hard, you're done, you've used it all up, go home and rest. Because people do better work, and people do more creative work when they are refreshed and when they're feeling good.
Yet people still want to take some performance-enhancing Adderall, whatever, Provigil, and just try to crank out a couple more lines of code. And it is an epidemic in colleges, I understand,
Correct.
of kids taking Adderall just to get
Correct.
through finals. What are we doing to these kids?
Well,
what treadmill are we putting them on?
that is exactly correct.
Do you think about that with Stanford? Because that's a high-performance school.
I don't know the statistics on drug use at Stanford, but I know overall prescriptions for ADHD drugs have gone up. By the way, prescriptions for antidepressants have gone up. And so if you were to ask me how to evaluate a company, the first thing I would do as part of a job interview is ask, Jason, by the way, do you ever see your kids besides on a screensaver? And what drugs are you on?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think there's a unfair expectation that if you're not sacrificing your life, you're doing it wrong. It's completely incorrect.
That's correct. And by the way, let me point out that if I said to you, I will give you $10 billion, buy back yesterday, you can't. The most precious resource is time, because time is not for sale.
Yeah, and you at some point you start to figure that out, and you start going, what exactly did those extra weekends do, et cetera. I've been thinking about this a lot. I think the demeanor of the founder is critically important in setting the tone. So I admire Elon for sleeping on the factory floor and saying, hey, we got to get this thing fixed. But I would not admire that as being the sustained expectation, right? And so I think there's a time to say, hey, we've got to buckle down and show that we can put in a weekend here to catch up or fix this problem for a customer, client, whatever. But there is some weird disease that spread through entrepreneurship that the number of hours equals success. It is the opposite.
That's exactly correct. Plus which, my friend Bob Sutton wrote a famous book some years ago called The No Asshole Rule.
Yes, I remember that.
And now he, of course, has come out with, so to speak, the sequel, which is the Asshole Survival Guide, because not enough people followed the first thing.
Yeah.
So you can work hard, but you should not be abusive to your employees.
No.
And many of the most admired, in quotes, CEOs, or at least admired by some people, are known for their tempers, including your friend Elon.
Yeah, I don't think he's got a major temper. I think not compared to Steve Jobs or something. Well, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were, I think when you look at the 80s, 90s, like that was when it was super hardcore. Now, because for this category of employees that we're talking about, startup ones, technology ones, because of the mobility, there's an argument to be made that they're being super coddled for this class of employee.
I don't see it.
With the foosball tables and the work from home and unlimited vacation.
It's maybe, in theory, unlimited. Nobody's taking any vacation. There's a book called No Vacation Nation. So, as I talk about in the book, Dying for a Paycheck, there is the Palo Alto Medical Foundation, which, as you know, very good, part of Sutter Health, great organization, that has a mobile van. The mobile van goes to high technology campuses with high paid employees, all of whom have health insurance. Why does the mobile van go to these workplaces? Because the employees believe that they are so busy and what their work is doing is so important that they cannot take time out to do a physical. And in the New York Times article that describes this, the head of the PAMF mobile van unit says, number one, I'm doing a physical to somebody and he's on his cell phone. Mm-hmm. He cannot get off the phone even to take care of his physical health. And the second thing he says, which I think is very, very telling, he said, I have seen a lot of 30-year-old engineers with 50-year-old bodies. And when you're a 30-year-old with a 50-year-old body, you can probably get it back, but prevention is going to be much easier than remediation.
Yeah. And what's the point? I mean, if you're already that successful, that you're here in Silicon Valley working and doing great, you don't need to make your body a 50-year-old body when you're 30. It just doesn't make much sense. How much of this has to do with the addiction to smartphones and social media? Because these things are creating massive anxiety. The news cycle, which, I don't know if you read Steven Pinker's books, but Steven's got some really interesting thoughts on like, hey, whatever the worst thing that happened today is, we all get it broadcast to us. And the social media anger cycle of being outraged constantly and news stories just creating massive anxiety. It seems to me like there's, independent of work, a social media mobile addiction, news addiction that is creating a massive overhang on people.
Well, you probably know my friend Nir Ayel,
Yeah.
who wrote the book. I mean, about this. Hooked.
Yeah.
If I make money, the more time you spend on my site, it is in my interest to use every psychological trick in the book to keep you addicted, to give you little bells and rings and
Dopamine
reinforcements hits. And
variable reinforcement.
How many more followers are there? How many more people are watching the Jason Calcanis podcast, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah.
And you
Likes.
it is designed to be addictive.
Right. It is really fascinating, like, that adults cannot get off of it. I deleted Facebook and Twitter from my phone. I had to put Twitter back on because I felt it necessary when I was on CNBC. Didn't know what the reaction was because people were like, there's all these bots on there that are short selling and they're like replying back to CNBC. And I'm like, I am literally being trolled by Russian bots or like Tesla short seller bots. So every time I mention a company, if I'm pro or against it, I get like 20 anonymous, kind of quasi-anonymous accounts. I'm sure you've seen them on Twitter that are like writing these really vicious things. And then I click and I'm like, oh, they're following 200 people and they have 5 followers. This is one person with 20 accounts doing psych ops on correspondents and speakers on CNBC to try and change their mood and their position in order to enhance their stock position. The world has gone effing crazy.
It's exactly correct. It is exactly correct. And people need to, relax and decompress. But mostly, I think what people need to do, your listeners, not so much the founders, but the employees, but maybe the founders too, is they need to take care of themselves. I mean, this is a theme, interestingly enough, that has come out through many of your questions and your comments. You talk about people exercising. You talk about people, turning things off and the electronics off. You talk about people, stopping with the drugs and starting with the meditation. That's exactly correct. People need to, in a world in which not enough employers and founders and CEOs are taking responsibility for people's well-being, people need to take responsibility for their own well-being.
Yeah, I think it's wise to create your boundaries and to set this discipline because there's another counter. It's interesting. Whenever there's a trend, like you've successfully identified here in Dying for a Paycheck, like people killing themselves at work, there's a counter trend of like all these people trying to balance it, right? So you see this early like Tim Ferriss crowd where they want to optimize their life and they want to be super effective, but they don't want to work themselves to death. Obviously, he had the book, The 4-Hour Workweek. It was a sort of tribute to efficiency, and there's a sort of an efficiency. But my question to you is, if this is all so bad, and these people are highly compensated, why do they stick with it?
They stick with it because, in many instances, the companies very cleverly play to their egos. So you come to work for me at Amazon or GE and you think, you're having a hard time. And I say, Jason, aren't you good enough? Aren't you good enough? If you were a GE leader, you'd figure it out. We're doing special stuff at Amazon. What special stuff are we doing? We're delivering people crap faster. We're not. Let's be clear. Amazon is not curing cancer.
No, they're getting our books to people same day. Thank God for that.
That's right.
That is pretty delightful.
That's
but
wonderful.
It is true. Like when people look at meaning of their work.
Yes.
I always have this talk like you could go work at Google and Facebook and get 0.001% more people to click on the ads, that they don't need that product or service. And, you'll put 10 years of your life into optimizing people clicking on meaningless advertising.
This
or
this
work
is
for a
what
company.
Peter Thiel has said.
Yeah. It is his position as well. Like, why go work there? And
Yeah. Peter Thiel has said that we're spending a lot of brain power on stuff that doesn't matter. How to hook up better.
yeah. Well, that could arguably, Darwin might feel that this was a good use of people's times. So people stay because they're
Ego.
being...
That's number one. It's number one, ego. Number two.
Yeah. That makes sense. They want to work for... It's really fun to say you work for Amazon.
A high prestige company, and also to work at a place where many people are quitting. You could say, I'm tough. You use the analogy of the Navy SEALs. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You know, I'm tough enough to do it.
I'm not going to ring the bell.
Number two. And
quit.
As one of my friends said, who I interviewed for this book, getting a job is a job in and of itself. If you are psychologically and physically exhausted, you don't sometimes have the energy to extract yourself from the situation.
So it's a Stockholm syndrome, kind of like...
Well, no, it's not Stockholm syndrome.
It's
That's part of that. You love your captor, but it's also you simply are so exhausted. Getting a job requires you to show up at your best. And if you're stressed out and sick and depressed, you are not going to show up at your best. So therefore, it's going to be hard for you to extract yourself.
That's fascinating. People can't extract. So what are some things that companies can do to get people to take more control of your health? What company does this well? Like, what company has great balance? I know one, my friend Dave Goldberg, rest in peace, who was running SurveyMonkey. He died tragically at 48. I'm 47 now. It was 3 years ago. Wow. And we miss him. And he told me something really profound. He's like, I am having the easiest time hiring ever. I said, in Silicon Valley, or would you move the office? He's Toronto or something, or in Boise, Idaho? He's like, no, it's in Palo Alto. I'm like, well, how do you do that? He's like, I hire people and I tell them that their family is the most important thing, and that if they need to pick their kids up, I trust them that they'll get their work done. And so now I am having, the word is spreading that at SurveyMonkey, they're such a profitable and great company that we can overstaff a bit, and if you need to see your kids, it's okay. Whereas the explicit instruction another company told people is the weekends are when you see your kids. And he took the opposite approach and just, bring your kids by the office, go see them, pick them up from school, come back if you want, or if you can't make it, it's okay. I'm sure you'll get your work done.
And that's exactly right. And one of the most important things of elements of a healthy workplace is control, job control. And the sense that yes, Jason, you got to do some work and you've got to do some productive work. But when you do it, and even more importantly, how you do it is up to you. I am not going to micromanage you.
Yeah.
Most adults and most intelligent adults will find micromanaging to be quite stressful.
Yeah. I use the threat of micromanaging as the reason to hit your goals. This is what I tell everybody who works for me. This is what you learn as you get older. I know everybody hates being micromanaged, and I say there's only one circumstance where you'll be micromanaged if the result is not there, and then I will roll up my sleeves and I will get super laser-like focused on every detail. So in the case where you want to be micromanaged, just don't get the results and I'll be there. And then you know what happens? You just hire adults, and we in the hiring process, we tell people, like, the only place you shouldn't come work here because it's only a dozen people anyway. If you need to be managed, go somewhere else. Like this is not. There's no management program here. There's nobody here to do that. The other thing I decided just this past year was to overstaff and overcompensate people. This is my new thing. If you overstaff by, I think the number might be 20%. I don't know exactly. Then when a new project comes up, there's not a sense of, oh my God, who's going to do this? And there are some people who are wired, no matter how many resources the company has, to have that default reaction. New project comes up, who's going to do it? And so I just say, whatever number of people we think we have, let's just have one more. So if we think we need 9, let's have 10. If we think we need 15, let's have 16. And then if somebody leaves, gets hit by a bus, God forbid, or we need to have extra work done, we can do it. You don't have to be optimally staffed. You could have, if the business is profitable and designed for profit, just have a little extra in terms of the number of people.
Correct.
It's working better for me. And then I'm also giving people, I think, long-term compensation that takes years. So stock options take 4. Most people in the Valley are moving to 5. Some
They
people
should, because 4 guarantees 25% turnover.
Yeah, instead of 20.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have a friend who just came back who worked for Uber, and he left. And I said, why? And he said, because I've been there, 4 years and
Fully vested.
And I'm fully vested. And I said, isn't there refresh? And he said, not enough. And so basically, so people move from with a 4-year vest, you got 25% turnover. With a 5-year vest, at least you get it down to 20.
Yeah, and I think backloading them is the other thing. Snapchat did that. They, you get 10%, 10%, 20%, 20%, 30%, something in that kind of general range of backloading it. So the longer you stay, the more you get. I think the other thing is firing off a second option grant after 2 years if the person's good.
Yes.
Now you got 2 in parallel. So that's how venture funds work and why people do not leave venture funds. Because if you're at a venture fund and we have 4 funds and we both started, if you leave early, you might get all of fund 1, half of fund 2, 10% of fund 3, and nothing of fund 4. So because they're overlaid, they become super, super hard. The other thing I found is making things fun and not overreacting as the boss has worked. I look back at myself as a younger boss and I look and I go, I used to take everything too serious. Everything to me was like a
crisis.
War, just a war. I was like a samurai, like wartime kind of, I was like a Toshiro Mifune type samurai, which is just like, everything's got to be a battle. Nothing can just be done gracefully, easily. Now I just say, everything's got to be efficient. Make everything efficient and make it look effortless. And save the outrage and the insanity for when you need it. Like it matters. Like you're running out of funding. You need to like insanely go after funding. But I find some people make everything, like the highest 10 out of 10 crises.
And that's one of the reasons why there's so much stress in the workplace, because everything is a crisis, and therefore we're in crisis mode all the time. The cortisol level is always high, and people are sick. Yeah.
Is there I know this is outside of both of our realms, but is there a medical pill or procedure for lowering cortisol in people?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then in terms of the people who get these leadership positions who are high energy people, do they frequently know that they are triggering this massive cortisol reaction, or are they just blind to it?
I think many successful entrepreneurs, as you know, are blind to everything except getting the product out the door. Yeah. And as you used the Steve Jobs example earlier, I mean, there was going to be no compromise for his standards of quality and design and whatever. And if there was a toll taken, that was a toll that was, it was okay.
Yeah. And then you look back on your life and you're like, wow, I denied my daughter existed. That was a toll that was too much. Right?
And in the story in Isaacson's biography of him, he has this birthday party in which, he's basically by himself.
Yeah. It's like, yeah. I wonder why. Yeah. I think
And we know the second thing that you can do to build a healthy workplace is to build a workplace in which people support each other. Social support's important. In times of crisis, do you have friends? Do you have work people at your workplace who will come to your aid? Financial aid, give emotional support. If you're going through a divorce or there's a death in the family or something, have you built a workplace in which people care for and about each other?
Yeah. How does one do that? How does one create that kind of workforce where everybody kind of cares about each other without it getting like too weird that you're going out to dinner every night and stuff like that?
We don't need to go out to dinner. I think you need to have an occasional social event. And again, I think it's what the tone that the boss sets. So I have a former student who's named Bruce Kozad, who runs a company called Jazz Pharmaceutical. There was a person, one of their employees in Philadelphia, relatively young woman, middle age, in her 40s. Her husband dropped dead of a heart attack. People immediately offered babysitting assistance because she had young kids. They offered her food. And it's not these babysitting assistance or the food. It's the idea that people around you care about you as a human being, and they're going to come to your aid. And of course, Bruce called the woman and said, look, you've had this crisis. Take as much time as you need to recover, and we'll pay you.
Wow. That's incredibly. When people see that kind of kindness from the founder, that fear that I could be fired at any time, I think that is how much is that like angry founder who will fire people at any time? that's got to be like on the top of people's list. Like, I wonder if I'm going to get fired or this business isn't going to work.
That's a form of economic insecurity, which is extremely stressful because people believe that no matter how much they're doing or how well they've done in the past, they are not secure in their jobs, and that's a very stressful kind of existence. It leads to this fight or flight. You're always on alert, and we're always on alert. You are, you've put your hormones in the wrong place.
It is when you're that amped up, I don't think your decision making gets much better either. Like if you're fearful, I don't think you make great.
No.
Having played a lot of high stakes poker, like when you're scared of the other player, like then they have the advantage.
Yes.
When you're fearless and you're just like, no, they're a poker player, I'm a poker player. You can have optimal decision making in the moment. So I play with the world's greatest poker player every week, Phil Hellmuth. He's obviously much better player than I am. He's got 14 bracelets. But playing with him, I'm not intimidated by him in any way because I know exactly how he plays now. He's still better than me. He'll still win more than against me. He's obviously always going to be better. But I don't have that. I've never had like a fear of him. No. I've just had that respect for like, that's a bigger shark.
Well, you don't strike me as a very fearful person.
I don't have that gene of like the fear.
And by the way, that probably makes you a healthier human being, both physically and psychologically.
You know what I learned through a career of being an entrepreneur? It's always worked out. So the times I've had this like huge fear of failure, huge fear that everything was coming apart, I was always able to navigate it. And now I look at it like, yeah, if you go out into the open ocean, there could be big waves sometimes. But I'm a good captain and I'm one of the best, so I'll get through them. Yep. And I have the skills, so there's no reason to panic. And I'm not going to help the situation.
And also, you're in a very good position because you work for the best boss possible yourself. I mean, people. I mean, what does they say? It's all trickles down or something.
Yeah.
So the problem is for the people who are working for other people. Oftentimes you are it goes back to the point I made earlier. When you go to work for somebody else, they are more important to your well-being than your family doctor. And you have really placed a lot of your psychological and physical well-being in their hands. And hopefully they will steward that and take that responsibility seriously.
Yeah, I had a friend who... Mark Goulston, he wrote a book, Get Out of Your Own Way. He was a friend of mine from LA. I knew him he was actually in the OJ trial. He was like an expert witness in the OJ trial. It was this big thing. And he told me at one point I was dealing with like firing somebody, like a leadership kind of position. And I was like, he's like, are you rooting for that person anymore? I was like, no. He's like, you're rooting against him, right? Like, I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of rooting against him. I was like, it's not fair to have him there. You're literally actively rooting against somebody who works for you. Like, that's not fair to you or him. Like, just get him out, right? And this is what I tell a lot of people who have management challenges is when you get that challenging person, you decided to hire them, so then coach them to success or get them out.
Correct.
You put them on the team. It's employment at will. And if the employee won't leave and you're not rooting for them, then you have to be the bigger person and then get them out of there or change your thinking, root for them. Correct. And say, I'm going to show them how to get there.
Correct.
Right? Like, just take the time to show them how to get there. And it doesn't mean you have to lower the standard, but you could be tolerant of people being 8 out of 10 at something you're 9 out of 10 at. That's one of the, I think, challenges. I know Elon has probably had this challenge. Like, he's so good at what he does that I can imagine, without knowing it specifically, like, I think Jobs probably had this too, which is like Jobs could see in his head perfection, but other people can't see inside your head as the founder. So you've got to really slow down.
And communicate.
Whereas like a Steve Jobs, like, why the heck is this not where it needs to be? Slow down. Just take people for a walk, like that's, I tell you, if you want the best management technique, just take people for a burger.
Yep.
No agenda burger. Every day when I'm here at the office, I'm just like, anybody want to get a burger? And then I just see who opts into the burger. And then inevitably, it's higher function after a burger, and we don't even talk about business. We're just having a burger. That kind of social kind of issue just makes it work so much better. Is it different in other countries?
Yes.
How
and
different?
You know that.
Yeah. Well, unpack it for me.
You know that.
Yeah.
It's, worse in China. where apparently, according to a study published in China, 1 million people a year are dying from overwork.
Literally just dying from work.
Yes, dying from overwork.
Yeah.
1 million people a year.
Not suicide jumping off the Foxconn building.
Well, that's part of dying from overwork.
Yeah.
But yes, 1 million people. It would be better in the Nordic countries. And by the way, if you look at the competitiveness, including even in the technology and certainly in design of countries like Denmark and countries like the Netherlands, they're doing fine. They have thriving economies. They have healthy people.
They have 9 unicorns in Sweden, as an example.
Yep.
Because, there's not a lot of sunlight and people write code on.
Well, but also people,
No, they have highly talented workforces.
They have highly talented workforces, and they are working in a sustainable way. So earlier you used the word sustainable. I think that is exactly the right word. You want, just as we want our environmental policies to be sustainable, so we don't use up everything and drown ourselves in the oceans. We want our policies at work and our social policies to produce a sustainable workforce. So if you think you're in for a marathon rather than a sprint, you are going to manage your people and do things quite differently because you understand you're in this for the long haul. But one of the things which you know about the Silicon Valley, people are for the most part not in it for the long haul. It's made to flip. I want to create a company.
Yep.
I want to sell the company. The venture capitalists understand very well the time value of money, and so there's not this long-term sustainability perspective.
What's this we're looking at here? This chart, I'll describe it to people. It says GDP per capita, and it's in my hip chat. But this is the deaths per 100,000 persons attributed to workplace exposure. Netherlands, Denmark, Finland. Wow.
And the United States is off the line. And so what that suggests is that controlling so one of the things that my colleagues and I did, and we're still trying to publish this paper, the other 3 have been published, is to try to estimate of the 120,000 workplace deaths a year, how many of those were preventable. And and of course, what the chart illustrates is something that's true for air pollution and tuberculosis as well. As countries get richer, they first of all, they spend more on health. And secondly, they fix preventable causes of death. Yeah. So you fix water pollution as you get richer, you fix air pollution, you fix tuberculosis and infectious disease. What this shows is that for deaths from the workplace, the United States is off the line and not in the right direction. Considering our wealth, we have not done a very good job of fixing our workplace environments.
And I think it's all stress and mental health. It's all stress and mental health, right? Like,
it's a lot of it.
It does feel to me like we're heading in the wrong direction. I agree that we're heading in the wrong direction. It's like interesting when I meet people in China, they're working 996 there. They laugh at us in America now that we're soft because they work 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week if you want to work in a startup, which like I could understand that happening during a code push or a product release or some big sales push, but that's not sustainable for humans in any way.
It is not sustainable, and you'll be pleased or sad, depending upon your perspective, to know that the rates of diabetes and cardiovascular disease are soaring in China and India.
Really?
Yes.
So they're basically getting our disease now.
Correct.
Yeah, look at this. Here's another one where we're off the chart. This is healthcare costs per person attributable to workplace exposure. And
we are, and again, off the line because we are spending more than we should given our GDP per person because we have not proactively, and it goes back to a word that I don't think you like. It's a word called regulation, but we have not done very much to fix the workplace and make workplaces healthier. And you mentioned OSHA. OSHA understands the effects of stress on work, and OSHA would like to do something about this, or at least measure it. But of course, in our current political climate, and maybe in the deregulatory climate that even predates the Trump administration, OSHA has its hands tied. OSHA has hardly enough budget to do what it's supposed to do.
It's interesting that a lot of the countries that are high functioning, they've decoupled healthcare from employment.
Yes.
If we did that, how big of an impact would it have? Is that half the problem, or is it a third?
It's close to half the problem.
Half the problem?
Yes. The fact that absence of access to health care means you a much higher morbidity, and we know the mechanisms. People without health insurance don't get screened. People, so therefore, when first of all, they don't get the preventive screenings like the blood glucose and cholesterol, but also when they present with cancers. I mean, there's been specific studies of specific cancers. If you don't have health insurance and you present with breast cancer or cervical cancer, it is going to be much more advanced.
Right, because you're not getting those regular checkups.
Because you're not getting the screenings.
Because it costs money. It's friction.
And of course, there's a thing in the New York Times article this last weekend about Aetna. Aetna is saying, you shouldn't go to the emergency room. One of the reasons why people go to the emergency room is because they don't have a family doctor, because they don't have health insurance. And so people are going to, this is not a very cost-effective place to get primary care. But, but that's another cost that we incur because too many people are uninsured.
Yeah, this seems to me like the burden that leads to a perverse relationship between employers and their employees. Many employees feel trapped in their job.
Correct.
Because not only do they have to worry, oh my God, can I find another job with healthcare? What will happen in that period when I don't have it? But there's another layer that is, do I have to switch all my doctors to be on plan again? Do I have to lose that continuity and start over? And then how long is the wait? It's just like,
and by the way, in labor economics, there's a technical term for what you just described. It's called job lock.
Job lock.
Yeah. When people are locked into the job because and we know that it would be better for everybody if they found the job for which they were better suited and the employer was better matched and everything was all better, but they can't because they are trapped by the health insurance issue.
All right. Once again, Jeffrey, you've said it all. It is killing us. Dying for a Paycheck is out now, How Modern Management Harms Employee Health and Company Performance and what we can do about it. Obviously, there's a lot more in the book, so go buy it, listen to it, which is what I'm doing. I'm listening on Audible. It's super efficient for me. And if you want to go to the Graduate School of Business at Stanford, you got a 0.01% chance of getting in, so good luck with that. He can't help you. You must get asked constantly.
I can't help anybody.
But and
I've written letters. When I write recommendation letters, they never get in.
It works against it, or the people asking can't get in. Therefore, they're pulling the Hail Mary.
I don't know.
It's so hard to get into that school, huh?
I know. I tell people all the time, I can teach there, but I could not possibly get admitted.
No, I would not. I was allowed on campus like twice. They had me there for speaking. They have the security guard waiting to walk me off campus. There's no way you're staying here. I also think making the physical environment calm and fun and not worrying. Like, I think when the boss worries and it's not fun anymore, a lot of these bosses are not having fun in their jobs. They're under so much pressure themselves to perform in the competition. I always tell founders, when you come into work, fake it.
That's exactly right.
Don't go in and be like, oh my God, this fucking ship is going to flip over and we're all going to die. That's like the pilot of the plane. You're going on the mission to kill Osama bin Laden. You know there's a chance you're not going to make it out. You cannot tell that to the team. Just focus on what they've got to do. If it doesn't work out, guess what? It's a giant arcade here in Silicon Valley. If you lose a quarter playing asteroids, you can get another quarter. You can start another company. And these poor kids, some of them are not and I always think about this, what is our responsibility as investors, now that I'm an investor, in thinking about the psychological fitness of founders? Because the outlying results I have come from founders who are extreme. So it works against my portfolio experience to have level-headed founders or non-extreme founders. And it's like, what kind of test? Have you ever heard of people testing for people's fitness to be CEOs? No. This is one thing we should really work on, is there should be a aptitude test or a fitness test for being specifically a startup founder, because there has to be some balance between the extreme nature of it and best practices. Somebody needs to come up with before you start a company, here's how to know if what you're going to experience and how to psychologically deal with it.
Yeah. Well, there are two images I have of leaders/managers. One is shock absorber, and the other is transmission. So, the question is, shock absorber, of course, buffers the external shocks and tries to protect your team from this. And the transmission says, I've got this much pressure. What's my gear ratio? 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 4-to-1.
Wow, yeah, here we go, yeah. I think buffering is just such a critical job. I know in the times I've been in different leadership positions, like there is a long list when you're at the top of the problems of the business. And if you were to list them, just to read them to your employees, if a founder got up at the beginning of every month and said, here's what you told me was completely fucked up about our business. Let me read it to you. Literally, people would have a panic attack in the room. You have to be able to take that list and go, this is all accomplishable and these ones are existential. I'm going to put the existential ones over here and understand this is an existential threat. Facebook.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say, not that I'm an expert on startup founders or any other kind of CEOs, but I think it goes back to something that you said earlier. People are horrible at setting priorities. So when Gary Loveman took over Harrah's and made a fortune for himself and for the investors, he basically shrunk everybody's job. And the reason is he said mediocrity basically comes from trying to do too many things, and excellence comes from taking your energy and applying them against a limited set of objectives, which are mission critical.
Yeah. This is a very important lesson. I basically have now ground down my own schedule to being meeting founders of companies and spending time with them is the most important thing I do. So this podcast is a front for doing that. The events are a front for doing that. And as I narrow that, I'm seeing like everything just lifts, right? So to the extent you can look at your job and say, what am I doing that's
irrelevant,
literally irrelevant, or can be outsourced, or
it's not that important.
Just not that important. Yeah, just deprioritize and focus on what's going to have the most leverage. This concept of leverage is something that comes from adulthood. Like when you become an adult, you're like, oh, spending a year writing this book will have massive leverage. On Twitter, tweeting 10 times a day will not have massive leverage. I need to finish a book to have leverage, right? All right, listen, we could talk for hours, and we have over the years. Jeffrey Pfeffer is a professor of organizational behavior at Stanford's Graduate School of Business, which was, by the way, the PhD I dreamed in getting was industrial organizational psychology. And I was going to go to Stevens Institute. Okay. Do you remember Stevens Institute?
I know Steve. Yeah, sure. Of course.
I don't know. Do they still teach industrial organizational psychology?
Yes, a few places.
No, it hasn't. Has that contracted or just not expanded as
it's contracted.
It's contracted as a...
It's because it's fallen out of favor in psychology. So it's kind of moved to business schools. We now call it organizational behavior.
Oh, really? Is that what happened? Psychologists didn't want to do it.
Yes.
But business schools got obsessed with it.
Yes.
Interesting. And what do you teach there, by the way? What is the main course?
I teach an elective called The Paths to Power.
Ah, interesting.
We've talked about it. That's how I first met you, when we talked about the Power Book.
I know. The Power Book is where it's at. If you want to have a lot of power, write a check. Let me tell you something. I never realized how popular you could be until I wrote checks for a living to founders. You get real popular.
You'll get even more popular if you write checks for politicians.
You know what? I've specifically not done that. I have been asked so many times now, and I'm just like, I don't want to write one check to a politician because then you get sucked in to that entire vortex. And then you're like, your whole life revolves around meeting with them. Oh, I'll pay to not go to a meeting. Buy the book, everybody. Dying for a Paycheck. And while you're there, just click on the author link and pick up Jeffrey's. You have 2 other books or 3? How many books have you written?
15.
You wrote 15 books?
I've written 15
I got to go back into the archive there.
There you go.
Which one would you say, out of all of them, you're proudest of personally?
This one.
This one. After this one?
After this one, I would say... it's a tie between Power and Leadership BS. And Power I'm proud of because I get emails virtually every day from somebody who said, this book has changed my life. I have figured out how the world works. It's not what people are telling me, No. and I've now figured out how I can navigate and have more power.
Yeah, I always think about that, how to accumulate more power. I always think about how is it that I could have more influence in Silicon Valley? That's why I started doing CNBC again. I realized that I didn't have, in that public markets, any influence. And I was highly influential in the private markets, but zero in the public. And I was like, They kept inviting me on. I was like, I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to study like a maniac. And I'm going to have the most well-informed opinion of these public companies that when I go on there, people are going to go, that's the smartest guy you have on there. I want him on more. And you know what happened? That's exactly what happened. Now they offered me to be a contributor. I'm on 3 days a week if I want to. 3 days a week. And I don't trade public stocks. But all you have to do is the research. I put 4 researchers on a phone call. I said, make me smarter than anybody on these 3 topics. And then we talk for an hour on a conference call and doing notes. Have a secret weapon. Everybody else goes on CNBC. They wing it. Put 4 researchers together. You'll be influential. All right, everybody. And thanks to our sponsors. And we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.